Hello again to another Agricolor React, and today we will be watching the Kurils from Mark's Expedition, and it's a new channel. Kurils, I'm presuming Kuril Ireland, so I can see from map here. So just jump into it and see.
It seemed a lot of people enjoyed the video I made on Bear Island, and since I'm a man of the people, I will present to you another obscure place on Earth that I find somewhat interesting. But I'm also a man that is innovative, which means that this time I will not just be talking about one random island. Instead, I'll be talking about 56 random islands. So here I present you the full geography and history of the Kuril Islands. The Kuril Islands are a chain of islands that stretch over
Isn't that those islands that they were, Russia and Japan are technically still at war because they never signed like a peace treaty because they have a bit of animosity over some of those islands?
1,000 kilometers from the northern shores of Hokkaido to the southern tip of the Kamchatka Peninsula. To its west, you have the Sea of Okhotsk, and to its east, you have the Pacific Ocean. The climate of the Kuril Islands is subarctic, and they have a long, particularly stormy winter with short, foggy summers. There are 56 islands in total, and they are all volcanically created islands, with more than 100 volcanoes among them, and also very many hot springs. And these can be found all along the Kuril Islands. These volcanoes have been created by the activity of the tectonic plates below, specifically the large Pacific plate sliding under the smaller Okhotsk plate. The Kurils are therefore a part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and it's considered among the most volcanically active places on Earth. There are very few people living in the Kurils, with most of the islands being unpopulated. This makes the islands rich in unspoiled wilderness that is quite beautiful. I particularly like this volcano here. It's called Krenitsina, I think, and it sits within a lake on an island. To me, this is
that is
stunning.
Beautiful. Yeah, it is a stunning picture.
Agree with me. And for myself, it's a bit of a life goal to see this place with my own eyes. How does something like this even form, you might wonder to yourself, and that's a very good question. The lake in which this volcano sits is what is known as a caldera. A caldera is a sort of bowl structure that can form due to volcanic activity. If you have a volcano and it erupts particularly violently, it will release a lot of magma out of the ground. The chamber that sits below the volcano, the chamber that holds all this magma,
be empty and everything will sink in, is it?
That the structure becomes very unstable. This can cause it to collapse, resulting in what is essentially a sort of sinkhole. With time, this caldera can fill with water, which turns it into a lake. What happened here with Krenitsina is that after the caldera formed, it made an executive decision to erupt again. This is my simplified explanation of how we are left with this nice looking place. Somehow, this is also the fourth deepest lake in Russia. Now, I just spoiled that the islands belong to Russia, but I shouldn't let any Japanese people catch me saying that. The Kurils are contested islands of both Russia and Japan, and the question of who owns them depends a lot on who you're asking. Japan fully claims the islands up to this point here, and considers the rest of the islands as disputed. Russia just claims all of them. Google Maps takes a diplomatic approach and gives both the Russian and Japanese names. Who actually owns them? It's Russia, as they are the ones who administrate these islands. The inhabitants of the Kurils are mostly of Russian descent and speak Russian, as well as the Russian army and navy are both present on the island. The Japanese currently have no presence on the Kurils. It wasn't always like this though, as over the last half millennium, these islands have served as one large game of tug of war between the Russians and the Japanese, with both nations controlling the territory at different points. The interesting thing is that neither the Russians nor the Japanese are the native inhabitants of the Kurils. Then where are the native inhabitants? They're dead. They weren't always dead, however, and some descendants are still alive today. They're just no longer living in the Kurils. The original inhabitants were the Ainu people. Maybe you've heard of them. They are also native people of Hokkaido and Sakhalin. The Ainu were a maritime people who sailed along the Kurils to trade with the native peoples in Kamchatka, and also occasionally their Japanese neighbors to the south. The Japanese were very much aware of the Ainu, but for most of history they had very little interest in them, or even interest in what went on to the north of them. For the longest time, they did not even realize that Hokkaido was an island and believed it to be part of mainland Asia. For this reason, the Ainu were relatively undisturbed in their little corner of the world. That was up until a land far, far away was in need of fur. This is where I introduce a character into our story. Meet Vladimir Atlasov. Vladimir was a Cossack in Russian service and a renowned explorer of the Russian Far East. He led some of the first organized expeditions into the Far East, and doing so he was able to discover many new tribes and people groups. Vladimir traveled down the Kamchatka Peninsula and through this became the first Russian to discover the Kurils, and the first Russian to make contact with the Ainu. At this meeting with the Ainu, he killed 50 of them. It's important to note that the records of this time are very accurate and sometimes exaggerated. Vladimir was an absolute character, to say the least, and he played a very important role in the history of the Russian Far East, but he was far from a nice man.
Sounds
his
like it, yeah.
contact with new tribes often ended in a bloodbath if they were unwilling to pay tax, usually in the form of furs. He probably killed several hundred people in his lifetime. He was an explorer, a government agent, and a hunter, but you can also just say that he was a bandit who enjoyed a good bit of pillaging and plundering. He's also known to have traveled by reindeer. I wanted to mention that. During his travels in Kamchatka, Vladimir encountered a wreck of a trade ship where he met a Japanese man by the name of Denby.
So his name is Atlasov. I wonder if Atlas name, for the books of maps taken from him.
Denby was invited or kidnapped, it's not entirely known how this went down, and brought him back to St. Petersburg, where he was brought before the Tsar, where Denby told about his home country of Japan. From this and the other information provided by Vladimir, it encouraged Russia to send many hunters and trappers to the Russian Far East, which would mark the beginning of Russian influence in the Kurils. There would also be explorers from other European nations, such as the Dutch Maarten Gerrits and Vries, who would explore the Kurils in search of the rumored gold and silver islands. These islands, of course, never actually existed, and so the other European maritime nations lost interest in the Kuril region. What did exist in the Kurils was fur, and the Ainu, who were skilled hunters, began trading furs with the Russians that visited their islands. In return, the Ainu received European goods such as clocks, mirrors, clothes, and liquor, which the Ainu really liked. One of the main resources specific to the Kurils were the pelts of the Asian sea otter. Asian sea otters were particularly common on the island of Urup, which came to be known as the Sea Otter Island. Sea otter pelts were a luxury item in Russia, Japan, and also China. They were very large and pleasantly soft. This led to a belief in both Japan and China that wearing sea otter skin or sleeping on pillows made from sea otter skin would help fight off disease and would be beneficial for the skin. The sea otter would be hunted near extinction because of this, and still to this day they are considered an endangered species. These furs and Russian goods would be traded by the Ainu to the Japanese, which would represent one of the few sources of trade available to Japan during their period of isolation. You might know of the isolation period of Japan, named Sakoku, during the 17th and 19th century. The Japanese shogun forbade its citizens to leave Japan and forbade most foreign trade, apart from a few exceptions at the port of Nagasaki. Another exception was trade with the Ainu, whose trade became increasingly important during this period. Ainu trade was tolerated, but if the shogunate came to discover that the Ainu were trading with the Russians, it would be a big problem. The Matsumai clan of southern Hokkaido was the overseer of Ainu and Japanese trade, and they were very aware of trade with Russia and did the most to hide this fact from the shogun, as the clan became very wealthy through this trade. The shogunate did have its suspicions, however, and in 1786 they sent a number of officials to the Matsumai domain to investigate Russian trade in Sakhalin and the Kurils. One of these officials was Sato Genrokuro, who interrogated people affiliated with the Matsumai clan and who were present at a supposed incident in 1778, where Russian traders landed on the eastern shores of Hokkaido to trade with Ainu. Although it was stated that the trade was denied to the Russians, it was let known by the presence of Ainu who were bilingual in Russian, proving that there was in fact frequent contact between the Ainu and Russians. This would be the smoking gun in their investigation. Speaking of guns, the shogun was notably concerned about the possibility of the Matsumai clan buying firearms from the Russians. Firearms were a highly regulated item in Japan at the time, as the shogunate believed unauthorized firearms to be a threat to its power. The Matsumai clan was already more independent than other Japanese clans at the time, and they were also geographically removed from the rest of Japan. This event would contribute to a sense of urgency by both the shogunate and later Meiji government to control the northern territories, which included the Kurils. The Japanese claim would even go as far north as the entirety of the Kamchatka Peninsula, which was bold of them, because they never settled that far or ever really controlled the peninsula. A few thousand Japanese people would come to settle in the Kuril Islands, however, and the indigenous Ainu population would be forcibly assimilated or just removed from the islands. Russia was one of the main foreign threats in the eyes of the Japanese, representing a new, more powerful kind of barbarian. You can tell that the Japanese thought this way by a drawing that was made in 1813 when a Russian explorer, Vasily Golovnin, and his crew were captured at the Kuril island of Kunashir. You can see how much bigger the Russians were depicted. They would be imprisoned and released 2 years later. This and the Russian attack on the Kurils a few years prior to this event would increase the presence of Japanese military on these islands. In 1855, Russia and Japan signed the Shimoda Treaty, which would formally put the border between their two countries between the islands of Etorofu and Urup. However, only 20 years later, another treaty was signed in St. Petersburg, giving Japan ownership of all the Kuril Islands in exchange for Sakhalin. This treaty is the basis of the current territorial dispute in the Kurils. During the Second World War, the islands became important militarily as it served as a base for many naval operations by the Japanese. The island of Iterub, the one that has these very impressive looking white cliffs, was the assembly point of the strike force for the Hawaii operation. This was the strike force that did the attack in Pearl Harbor. The United States initially considered for its invasion of Japan to be done through the Kurils. This was, however, considered too difficult, and instead it was chosen to approach through the Marianas. Still, the United States wanted Japan to believe that this was the case, and therefore the United States launched Operation Wedlock, in which the Kurils played a notable role. It, among other things, involved tricking the Japanese into believing that the American invasion of the Japanese main islands would come along the Kurils in order to divert Japanese troops away from the real targets. The Soviets were not involved with the Allied war against the Japanese until the signing of the Yalta Agreement in 1945. In this agreement, the United States and Britain promised the Soviet Union that they could own southern Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands if they were to enter the war against.
Jesus Christ. If you think about it, I was just reading about it because I had a bit of a conversation about... Never mind, I'm gonna digress too much. But basically, Stalin got a lot in that Yalta and Potsdam and all those three conferences in 1945. Like, not enough that he got like whole east of Poland, the part of Finland as well, isn't it? All of the parts like the Prussia, you know, like where the Kaliningrad is now, the Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, all that parts. That's just, you know, whole Ukraine, today's Ukraine. the south, more on the south from Ukraine as well, Georgia and all those places. That's all just in Europe, and then you have all of the I don't know how it was in the Asia, as in, you know, where the Kazakhstan is, and Pakistan and Uzbekistan and all those places. Pakistan obviously was never part of USSR, but you know, that region. But then as well on the thing, like from Japan, and I don't know how about if they get something from China and stuff, but it just, he got a lot out of those conferences.
It's Japan. Following this agreement, the Soviets invaded the Kurils, and the islands have been under Russian control to this day. Supposedly, there are found in the Kurils very many remains of World War II fortifications, shipwrecks, and abandoned equipment and the like from the battles that had taken place here. Japan would sign the San Francisco Peace Treaty in 1951, formally ending the war. In this treaty, they were forced to renounce their claims to the Kurils. Now we're back in the modern day. How many people live in the Kurils these days? It's about 21,000, with a large portion of that living in the town of Yuzhno-Kurilsk, which is located here on the island of Kunashir. This is the most southern of the Kuril Islands. The second most populated island is Itryb, with 6,600 people living on it. These two islands make up the bulk of the Kuril's population and are also two of the
She said
four
21,000, that's smaller than the town I'm living in now.
big islands that are part of the chain. The third big island is Uruk. This is what is currently going on in Uruk.
Okay. Interesting.
A grand total of 0 people live on this island. The fourth and last of the big islands is Paramushir on the north end of the chain, which also has a sizable population of 2,500. Since this island is one of the most northern, it is notably colder and has significantly fewer trees on it than some of the southern Kuril Islands. What is the highest point of the Kurils? It is Mount Alide. This is the volcano on Atlasov Island. Atlasov Island. That does ring a bell. Why, it's our friend Vladimir Atlasov from earlier. It seems the Russian named this island after him. The peak of this island stands at over 2 kilometers tall. The Kurils are also fairly diverse and rich in the number of animals that make it or the surrounding waters their home. It is considered a biodiversity hotspot with many species endemic to the Kurils. The waters are rich in marine life, including high numbers of commercially important species such as salmon, crab, and pollock. The islands are also part of the migratory routes for some whales. A number of endemic bird species are found on the islands, such as the Ezo thrush, and also very many land mammals such as bears, deer, and cats. The Karelian bobtail is a species of cat originating from the Kurils, which is now a very popular breed of cat in Russia. Geopolitically, what is now the position that the Kuril Islands find themselves in? As stated in the beginning of the video, Japan does not recognize Russia's claim on the island. Their view is that when signing the San Francisco Peace Treaty, renouncing their right to the islands, it was not explicitly stated to whom these islands would belong, and the Soviet Union refused to sign the treaty. Furthermore, Japan also claims that the islands of Kunashiri, Etorofu, Shikotan, and Habomai are actually not a part of the Kuril Islands at all, and therefore not covered by the treaty. Russia, however, is not backing down and will not give up control of their islands. They are doing quite the opposite, having militarized the islands. The Kurils are geographically important for Russia as it increases their access to the Pacific Ocean. And what is the position of the Ainu in all of this? Neither Russia or Japan particularly care, since the Ainu have now
Most of the time it
inhabited
happens
the
like
Kurils
that,
for a long time, and since the Ainu do not have a sovereign nation of their own, there have not been any significant claims to the territories in recent times, as far as I could find. Hopefully this video taught you some things about the Kurils. They're some of my favorite islands.
Yeah,
which
they're
have
actually really
historically been
beautiful.
a lot more important than you probably would have thought. This could have been theoretically a
Look at
much
this place.
longer video, as there are very many more details about the Kurils I could have mentioned, but I have to work with the modern attention span, so I think this was a good gist. If you enjoyed this, please stick around as I plan on making more of these. At this point, I still have about 900,000 islands in the world to go.
Oh, that was rather a lot. we still have something to watch. And this, okay. So, like he said, those islands are looking beautiful. It's just I didn't realize that they are so nice. So, sorry, I'm being distracted by this ad in here. But I did hear about the fact that there is a, like the dispute over those islands between Japan and Russia, and basically it's the fact that, yeah, I did remember watching something years ago about it, but never really. I couldn't remember right now at this moment. Just basically, that's what it is, isn't it? You watch something, but like he said in the end, like the attention span is not that great for people. For me as well. I'm pretty terrible with my attention span, so yeah. So actually, that was the end. I didn't even notice. I thought that was just like a ad break shortly before the end, but no, that was just the end of the video. So yeah, very good video. Explained quite a lot, and yeah, it showed that those islands are really beautiful and really sparsely populated. And I'm guessing it's because it's not easy to live in there because of the climate. And like it's cold there, I guess, for most of the time. And he said summers are really foggy. So yeah, not everyone likes that. I don't. I would love to go and visit some stage in my life, maybe. It's another place I would love to go and visit, just see on my own. That volcano in that lake. Yeah, beautiful. Yep. So, would you like to go there and visit? Because I would. But probably hard to get there too. So, thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.